Having considered in general the psychological effects of individual frequencies and the combination of frequencies, let us now examine the specific frequency distribution patterns of common sounds. Obviously, it would be impossible to describe the frequency distribution patterns of every possible sound. Every frequency distribution describes one sound or another. So in this section, we'll be examining the frequency distribution patterns of sounds most commonly found in music. We will only examine 4 categories of sounds, but they cover a surprisingly large amount of ground. With them, we will be able to account for the majority of sounds found in most music. The simplest frequency organization structure is the tone. Tones are very common in nature, and our brains are specifically built to perceive them. A tone is a series of frequencies arranged in a particular, mathematically simple pattern. The lowest frequency in the tone is called the fundamental, and the frequencies above it are called the harmonics. The first harmonic is twice the frequency of the fundamental, and the second harmonic is 3 times the fundamental frequency, and so on. This extension could theoretically go to infinity, but because the harmonics of a tone typically steadily fall in volume with the increasing frequency, they tend to fade out eventually. The character of a particular tone, often called its timbre, is partially determined by the relative volumes of the harmonics. These differences are a big part of what differentiates a clarinet from a viola, for instance. The reedy, hollow tone of a clarinet is partially due to the higher emphasis on the odd-numbered harmonics. The bright tone of a trumpet is due to the high volume of its treble range upper harmonics, while a mellower tone of a French horn has much more subdued upper harmonics. Tones are the bread and butter of most music. All musical instruments except for percussion instruments primarily produce tones. Synthesizers also mostly produce tones. The human voice produces tones, and thus could justifiably be lumped into the previous section. But there's a lot more to it than that, and since the human voice is such an important class of sounds, central to so much music, it is worth examining more closely. The human voice can make a large variety of sounds, but the most important sounds for music are those that are used in speech and singing, specifically words and consonants. A vowel is a tone. The specific vowel that is intoned is defined by the relative volumes of the different harmonics. The difference between and is a matter of harmonic balance. In speech, vowel tones rarely stay in one pitch. They slide up and down. This is why speech does not sound tonal to us, though technically it is. Singing is conceptually the same as speaking, with the difference being that the vowels are held out at a constant pitch. A consonant is a short, non-tonal noise such as t, s, d, k. They are found in the upper mid-range. The fact that consonants carry most of the information content of human speech may well account for the human brain's ears favoring the upper mid-range. So, we can see that the human voice, as it is used in speech and singing, is composed of 2 parts, tonal vowels and non-tonal consonants. That said, the human voice is very versatile, and many of its possible modes of expression are not covered by these 2 categories of sound. Whispering, for instance, replaces the tones of vowels with breathy, non-tonal noise, with consonants produced in the normal manner. Furthermore, many of the noises that are made, for instance by beatboxers, defy analysis in terms of vowels and consonants. So far, we have examined tones in the human voice. The human voice is quite tonal in nature, so in a certain sense we are still looking at tones. Now we will look at drum sounds, which though not technically tones, are still somewhat tonal in nature. A drum consists of a membrane of some sort stretched across a resonating body. It produces a sound when the membrane is struck. A drum produces a complex sound, the bulk of which resides in the bass and lower mid-range. This lower component of the sound, which is often referred to as the body, does not technically fill the frequency arrangement of a tone, but usually bears a greater or lesser resemblance to such arrangement, and thus the sound of a drum is somewhat tonal. In addition to the body component of the sound, which is created by the vibrations of the membrane, part of the sound of a drum is created by the impact between the membrane and the striking object. This part of the sound, which we will refer to as the beater sound, has energy across the frequency spectrum, but is usually centered in the upper mid-range in the treble. Now, having examined tones in general, the human voice, and drums, we come to the first and only completely non-tonal sounds that we will examine, cymbals. Cymbals are thin plates that are struck, like drums with beaters. The vibrations of the struck plates create extremely complex patterns of frequencies, hence the non-tonal nature of cymbals. Cymbals have energy throughout the entire frequency spectrum, but the bulk of said energy is typically in the treble range or in the mid-range in the case of large cymbals such as gongs. There is also reason to believe that cymbals have significant sonic energy above the range of human hearing, since their energy shows no signs of fading out near 20 kHz. In any case, because cymbals have so much treble energy, they are a very exciting type of sound.